Welcome to the Farmside Chat, and I'm Zippy Duvall, President of American Farm Bureau. And I know that I tell you a lot about my travels across America to talk to farmers and ranchers, but today, the farmer I'm going to interview is right here in Washington, D.C. So we're going to use our wonderful studio here at our home office. Our guest today is Isabella Chism, who is the chairwoman or chairperson of our Women's Leadership Committee. And she does a tremendous job for in that. But I want to welcome Isabella to the show today and ask Isabella, would you tell our listeners a little bit about the farm you and your husband run?
Oh, thank you, President Duvall. It's a pleasure to be here today, and especially both of us being in Washington, D.C. at the same time. It's great. So my husband and I farm in north central Indiana, and we raise corn, soybeans, and sweet corn with our daughter and son-in-law.
So I understand that you moved here as a young child from another country. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I immigrated from Austria with my parents when I was a young child and had no ag background. And then the story develops from there. So I'm a city girl, and then I married a farmer and learned the farm along the way.
How long has that farm been in existence?
Over 200 years. My husband is a fifth generation farmer. We are now farming with the sixth generation, and then we've got grandchildren coming up that will be the seventh on that farm, some of them already showing interest. Of course, the oldest one being 14.
So do they enjoy it?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And I can't imagine anything different for them, even though I did have a different upbringing.
Yeah, I know that a lot of the benefits that we as farmers see is being able to have our children on the farm, on the job with us, and working beside us all the time. And it is a true pleasure, and it's really a blessing that we be able to spend that time with them. It's a growing experience in building those relationships with your children that they never forget.
That's true, and I think it's a blessing on both sides. You know, for them, they don't really know the difference at this point, but they are learning a work ethic that they don't learn other places.
Yeah, you know, when I'm on the farm, I'll say stuff, do stuff, and even smell things that I got to look around to see if my dad's beside me because it just brings back unbelievable, wonderful memories of my past. Yeah. A little bit about what I mentioned earlier. I think there's about a third of our farms across America that's owned and operated by women. Tell me a little bit about what your perspective is on that.
So the last statistic I heard was 36%, which was just surprising to me. I don't think we think about that. I think when you say the word farmer, most people in their minds conjure up a man. Sometimes a very old picture of a farmer with traditional stereotypical farmer style, but that's not at all what we see today. And some women, and we find it in our boot camp trainings, that they are the farmer and the husband is the one that marries onto the farm. And we've had at least one in every single boot camp session.
So I think that's a growing part of our industry too, the ownership being by women. And we are doing a lot of outreach in our organization to better involve women into our organization. We've always been open to it, but the role of the women in the American Farm Bureau has changed over the years. Tell us how that's changed.
So I have seen the change just in my 40 years of marriage, the difference of the role of women. I remember when the seed salesman used to call the home and ask for my husband automatically. He didn't have any idea that I would know anything that he's going to ask me about. And it was a little offensive to me. And I see that some of that still carries on today in different areas in agriculture. And I think I've seen that women are natural collaborators, decision makers, and storytellers. And I think those are the strengths that we need to draw on in American Farm Bureau and our state farm bureaus to be able to better amplify that story that we have to tell about agriculture and rural family life.
And I think if the truth really be told, that the women in our families and in our lives are really the ones that are driving us each and every day to work hard and do the right thing for our family and our community. And I really look up to a lot of our women because of that. So let's talk a little bit about Women's Leadership Committee. And I want to talk about the boot camp, but I want to talk about it when you want to talk about it. So tell me a little bit about all the programs that you're involved in, and what do you think in your mind as chairman, where do you want to take this committee, and where do you want it to escalate at?
Okay, that's a great question, a deep question, and a fun question for me to answer. So I was elected to this position in January of 2021. And with that being said, to me, to be elected to anything, it puts a great weight on your shoulders because I'm representing those people that elected me. And so it's up to me to listen to them, to see what the challenges are and what they need and what kind of support they need. So starting there, that leads my way of thinking and the way that God leads me visioning forward for this committee and for our Farm Bureau programming. So I think that the women are asking for these opportunities to be stronger, more confident in their storytelling. I think they know they can tell the story and they know that they are the only one that can tell their story, but they don't know how, and they don't feel equipped or whatever that would happen to be. So the boot camp that you mentioned earlier and that I'm here for now is one of those tools and one of those programs that we have. And we offer it twice a year, spring and fall. It is application based and it's pretty tough to get in. So these are an elite group of women that go through this program and graduate from here. We only serve 15 women at every one of the boot camps, and they get one-on-one training. So they definitely, I know it sounds cliche, but they definitely come out different than they come in. And it's an amazing difference. We've seen women from this program go on to be directors of ag, run for political office, run their own farm confidently, grow their business in many different areas, and that's just the easy ones for me to remember. There's so many things out there. Another program we had the first year, the inaugural year for our ACE Summit, and it is for women only. It's the Women's ACE Summit. ACE, of course, standing for Advocate, Collaborate, and Empower. So we're bringing the women to DC. It will be every other year. So in 2024, we're already planning for that one here in DC. They come together for some training, one-on-one work, and then they go to the Hill and talk to their legislators and tell their story. So another way of peer-to-peer development, learning the skills, and then actually using the skills before they go home and can forget about those things that they learned. And then to keep in communication, we have our Facebook page. We also use a cultivator communication piece, which is an email resource, newsletter type. Anyone can subscribe to that. You don't have to be a woman to subscribe. We want everybody to know what we're doing, what's available for them or for the women in their lives.
Well, I can tell you these programs are very effective, and Isabella knows this, I had remarried after losing my first love, and my new love come from an area that she was a retired school teacher, and her dad was involved in agriculture, but she didn't grow up in it as deep as I did, and a lot of us did. So coming into my life as leader of the largest general farm organization, I asked y'all to expand one class by one person and let her experience that, because I knew that as she traveled the road with me, she'd have to tell those stories too. And it was a great experience, very challenging, even for a veteran teacher who had been teaching for many, many years. It was challenging to her, but it did bring her closer to the industry, a better understanding, and how important it is to be able to express yourself and tell that story. So thank you for allowing her to do that, and thank you for what you do in that area. So what I would like our ladies that are listening to understand, this organization has got its arms wide open, trying to be inclusive to everyone. We claim to be the voice of agriculture. And to be the voice of agriculture, we have to have everyone at the table. And that meaning male and female, large and small farms, organic and traditional, whatever it might be, we need all those different points of view coming together to create that policy. And then we need to be actively engaged in advocating it. I've seen under your leadership and your previous chairman, Sherry Saylor, take this committee and push it in a direction of being more of advocate for our policy and do a better job at that. So where do you think we're at on that road of being there, and what do you, in your mind, what goal do you have set for?
So my goal is to help as many women as possible. And I would be remiss not to mention that it's the strength of the committee and our staff, whether it's here at American Farm Bureau or in every state, that helps bring that vision to light. So when we look at our membership, and you said it exactly right, that we want, we're to be that voice, it needs to be all of our voices that are heard. And some of us are better at expressing stories, challenging people, and we need to plug into that. And that's my vision for the women's leadership programming. And I don't want it to be misunderstood that we are not only for women's leadership committees. We are for all women in Farm Bureau. We want to represent them all, and we want to support them all, and we want to encourage, empower them all, because it's all of us together that are going to amplify that voice. So advocacy is storytelling. Advocacy is involvement. And that's what I encourage the women to do on our committee as well as throughout the states. Some of the things that I hear from some of those women are that I've got a story, but everybody knows that story, or I don't have a story. So part of the mission and the vision is to help women specifically, but leaders in general, see that story that they have, that only they have, and to use the parts that they might think are not the pretty parts, not the informational parts, not the dynamic parts, and to see the power in those stories. I personally believe that advocacy is testimony. We're testifying of what we know, and not only is that historical, but that's prophetic. So when we tell our story, we're reminding ourselves of where we have come from, and we're telling others that same story, and then allowing them to see where we're going and where they can go with us. And that's what advocacy is all about to me.
You know, and advocacy can happen anywhere. Well, you don't have to come to Washington
Absolutely.
to be an advocate. So talk a little bit more about that, and I also would like for you to talk about when your committee goes out into the countryside, some of the activities you might be involved in locally.
Mm-hmm. So when we meet here in Washington, D.C. as a national committee 3 out of the 4 times that we meet. And then one time we go out into, no, actually I misspoke, 2 times we go out into other states. And our goal there is to engage with the women of that state. If they have a committee, we engage with the Women's Leadership Committee, and if they don't, we engage with the young farmers and the promotion and education committees in that state, whoever it would happen to be. So our goal with that is to build relationship, to help in understanding, because there are women in every one of those programs, that we can help create programs that will make them more successful, that will be the things that they need. But then we also do some kind of public service while we're there, community service. We ask the states to help us with that, like direct us, what would be helpful here? And that's what we try and do. And part of that goes back to, I refer to a quote by Theodore Roosevelt, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And agriculture is all about caring and supporting the communities. So when we go there, we want to support that community because it's accepting us in there for a time. We develop leaders there amongst their women as well as ourselves, and we learn what their policy issues and challenges are so that we can better advocate as a whole.
So, I know telling the story is important. So in your mind, what do you think, what category, what age group of people is the most important people to advocate to or tell our story to?
I think there is no one most important age group. I think no one is too old and no one is too young. I think that it's important, me for one, I am a grandma now and I love every moment of that, but any time that it's appropriate for me to take some of the older grandchildren with me to some of the advocacy events or things I'm involved in, I do. And it's amazing the things that they pick up. And I encourage that from all age groups. We just had somebody in boot camp. We have somebody in boot camp right now that she says, oh, I thought I was too old for this. And somebody at her state level told her, no, we need everybody. And that's exactly right. There's a balance in story. There's a balance in communication when we have all age groups involved together.
So at American Farm Bureau, we do a lot of storytelling from through a foundation to our youth across America, and in books that we print with factual facts about agriculture, and then we do leadership development to young farmer and ranchers across across our country that are male and female, come from all kinds of backgrounds, trying to develop those future leaders of our industry and farm bureaus across the country. I look at the Women's Leadership Program as a leadership development program, because you're taking talented women, young and old, and letting them find their God-given talent to tell their story. And then, of course, the Promotion and Education Committee to continue to educate people as to what agriculture is doing in our communities all across America. One of the challenges I gave you and all three chairmen of the national committees was to better work together. Tell me how that's gone.
It's gone very well, and I appreciate your leadership in that. When we start meeting together and listening to each other, then we can support each other, and then that voice does truly become that one unified voice for all of agriculture. So meeting with the Promotion and Education Chair and the Young Farmer Chair, Young Farmer and Rancher Chair, I should say, when we meet together, we find out how much we really have in common, and then what we do differently, we help grow each other. We share ideas. Like one of the new programs we have coming up is based on something that the Young Farmers and Ranchers had started a while ago, a little different format. And then the newsletter, the Cultivator newsletter that we talked about earlier, that's something that we helped the Young Farmers and Ranchers establish one of their own. They thought that would be beneficial to them. So, we share ideas back and forth. We don't get our toes stepped on, so to speak, because we know we're all working for the same goal.
Yeah, and we're a team now.
We are. We're a team.
And I'm very appreciative of you and the other two chairmen and the work you've done to bring everybody together to work as a team. Advocacy is such a big part of what we do, and we do all our advocacy through, of course, our specialists that work here at American Farm Bureau, and the most powerful branch of our advocacy comes from our grassroots, which are all volunteer leaders across this country, and a lot of them are coming through your program. Thank you so much, Isabella, for the work that you're doing, you and your committee. And we just very much appreciate the time that you give. Isabella, by way of being chairperson of the committee that sits on the board of directors, American Farm Bureau, and brings a very strong voice to represent the women in agriculture and her state, and we very much appreciate that. There's a new program that the Women's Leadership Committee is going to launch, and it's called ConnectHER. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
I'd love to tell you more about that. That's the program I actually referred to earlier, that the Young Farmers and Ranchers have something similar, and it gave us an idea. And I think that's where all good programs come from, is an idea of something else that, oh, it could do this and it could do that. And it's all about advocacy. It's about inspiring and empowering women to challenge themselves and move up in whatever level that would happen to be. So ConnectHER, which is a very distinguishable, ConnectHER, will elevate and celebrate dynamic and successful women leaders in agriculture by showcasing their leadership journeys, building that relationship for them, connecting them through a quarterly web event that we're going to have. We will also be promoting these events prior and post, so we'll have social media engagements. We'll also have some media, whether it's through interviews or articles written. So we'll be able to keep the relationships going. And I think those kind of things are important, because we need to be able to understand how similar we truly are. We might look at somebody in one position, think, oh, I could never attain that, or she would never talk to me. He or she, it doesn't really matter which. We all have those kind of limitations on ourselves. When there's no truth in that at all, we create those ourselves. So we hope to break down those barriers, to break down those walls, and make communication easy between those and elevate all of us. So our first, I do want to check my notes here to make sure that I say her name correctly. Our first featured leader this time is going to be Jennifer Sarangelo. And you know her well.
I know Jennifer.
Yes, as president and CEO of the National 4-H Council. She's such a dynamic speaker, and she's got such a good story. I think that's something that's important for all of our listeners, and it's open to anyone, so anyone can listen. It is going to be May 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody always asks. I usually say 8 p.m. and then say, oh, which time zone? It's 8 p.m. Eastern time, trying to find that nice middle zone. And people can register for that online at fb.org/agconnecther. Have to be sure and spell that right. You can also follow the Farm Bureau Women's Leadership Facebook page in order to find more information about that.
Well, I know, like the ACE conference, I know that this will be a successful program, and we look forward to you getting it kicked off, and we look forward to all the wonderful guests that you're going to have there. So we've had a great conversation today with Isabella Chism, who's a female farmer with her husband back home, and she works very hard on a lot of different fronts. And I'd like to just open this up and see if you have any last words.
You know, I think leadership and advocacy have a lot in common. They're a journey. It's not something you're usually just born with or born into. And President Duvall, honestly, if it weren't for Farm Bureau at the state and national level, or the Women's Leadership Committee, I wouldn't be in the position I am now. And it's because of being involved at the county level, the state level, in other organizations, Agriculture Council of America, for one, that does National Ag Day. Our Trade Advisory Committee that you mentioned earlier. You know, if I weren't involved in those things, I wouldn't have the opportunities to be at the tables in the public arenas that I am. And because of that, I'm able to advocate for farmers, for farm families, for rural communities. And that's the heart of who I am. And that's what I believe that God has called me to at this point. And everything in our lives has a season. So my season for full-time work on the farm has ended, at least temporarily, and now I get to do full-time work with our women in agriculture, and I love every minute of it. And I appreciate your support of us, of our program, and calling us all together and leading us in the way that you do.
Well, you inspire me, so I appreciate it. And you're right. Leadership is a journey, whether it be in Farm Bureau or whether it just be in our lives each and every day. I actually have a wall in my office that shows pictures of my journey to this position. And it was never a case that I sat in the audience and seen one of my predecessors doing this and say, that's what I want to do. It was always, I wonder if I could do that. And my mind would fictitiously convince me that I really wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. You have the opportunity to do that. All across America, there's 2,800 county farm bureaus that would love to have your participation in this great industry of ours and helping you discover your God-given talent as a leader, because you're all leaders or you wouldn't be listening to us today. So we hope that you'll reach out, become part of our Farm Bureau family and be active, and take advantage of some of these great programs that Isabella has mentioned today. So thank you for being with us. We hope that you have a wonderful day, and we both say God bless you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Farmside Chat. Please be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, take a minute to rate and review the podcast. This helps us continue to bring you farm fresh content that everyone can enjoy. Until next time, thank you and God bless you.